Emisión.net.
Hello again and welcome to Letter from England, broadcasting for AC Press and the Spanish Evangelical Alliance. Are the Roman Catholics rehabilitating Martin Luther? Luther's in vogue, and not just among Protestants. Jesús Bastante, a Catholic journalist, has just published his first novel, Schism, set amidst the struggle for power in 16th century Europe, which followed the break with Rome by the Protestant Reformation, which was set in motion by Martin Luther. Little by little, Luther is managing to throw off the shackles of the so-called Black Legend in which traditionalist Spanish Catholics have portrayed him. They've treated him as an alcoholic and high-living monk, without making much serious attempt to understand the German reformer. Well, Bastante tries to put this right and starts by asking a series of questions about what would have happened had Luther gone back on the Reformation, about the role played by the Emperor Charles V, and whether the Pope of the day, Adrian VI, could have prevented the schism which later became the Reformation. The novel looks at these momentous events through the eyes of the three leading figures as Europe moves from medievalism into the Renaissance, through endless intrigue and power struggles involving faith and political power. The novel opens at the famous Diet of Worms, following which Luther was condemned for so-called heretical teaching. The novel then enters the world of fiction as Luther, the Emperor, and the Pope attempt to halt the growing schism. The author wonders what a meeting between the three would have looked like if they had managed to reach agreement. The three of them, argues Bastante, had the future of the empire and of the faith in their hands. And yet, he says, at the crucial moments, they feel as weak as the smallest of men, without strength to make decisions which, without doubt, changed Europe and the world. Pressures both external and internal sap their resolve, he says, and he's written the novel to show, in his own words, how history ends up putting everyone in their right place. The author has also written books about the priests who support the Basque terrorist group ETA, and about the new Pope Benedict XVI, who, he alleges, is thinking about rehabilitating Luther in the Catholic world. He's even planning a trip to Saxony, apparently, the region where Luther pinned his theses against indulgences on Wittenberg church door and translated the New Testament into German. Then Bastante quotes the old chestnut that there's much more that unites Catholics and Protestants than divides them, something of which the Pope, he says, is well aware, yet not apparently aware enough to consider Protestant congregations true churches. It was this current Pope, before he was the Pontiff, who dismissed, reiterating traditionalist Catholic dogma that non-Catholic congregations are not true or proper churches. We're separated brethren at best. And the problem with Bastante's comment is that while on the surface there may appear to be much ground in common between Protestants and Catholics, the doctrines that divide us are some of the most fundamental of all. But the hints that Rome might be prepared to rehabilitate Martin Luther are nonetheless interesting. Quite frankly, they won't appeal to many evangelicals who would much rather Rome left their reformer well alone. But it does suggest that there's movement in some Catholic circles, perhaps to try and show that the Reformation wasn't quite as great a split, perhaps, as some may claim. There may be a little bit of revisionism going on, but there also may be a genuine desire to rehabilitate the figure of Martin Luther and learn from him. Well, Bastante bases his hopes in part on the fact that the current Pope is German, as Luther was, and that there are a similar number of Protestants and Catholics in Germany today. He's certainly right when he says that Luther and the Protestant schism are completely unknown by the general public in Spain, despite the fact that the two other leading figures of the time came from Castile, the Emperor and the Pope. He says it's a fascinating period of history, but at the same time full of simplifications which are the fruit of ignorance about it. And Bastante believes that Luther was a mystic, a strange personality with deep changes of mood. And once again it seems that the Catholic writer fails to understand the dynamics of conversion to Christ, and is left trying to interpret Luther merely within the context of 16th century religion and politics, without the vital dimension of personal transformation that Luther experienced. Yet he does at least set the record straight on one point. Of course, he wasn't a heretic. He was a reformer, Bastante says. He didn't want to split from the church, but put right what he considered to be abuses. And Bastante is undoubtedly right to say that Luther did not intend setting up a new religious institution, but then he adds that events and his personal pride led him to promote schism. Well, such a controversial remark is hardly likely to endear Bastante to any Protestant readers of his novel. In recent times, historians have made attempts to portray the 16th century Catholic Church in a better light, and Bastante claims that Luther's complaints were shared by a good proportion of the Catholic Church. Even Adrian VI, in a little-known but key speech to the Diet of Nuremberg, admitted that many of the friars' accusations were well-founded. Therefore, Bastante believes that many Catholics, on reading his novel, will come to see that Luther was right in many of the things he said, and Protestants will see that the break with Rome was unnecessary and the fruit of political, not spiritual, manoeuvring. Well, sadly, I think, for Bastante, 500 years of history have shown that the break was absolutely necessary if a vibrant and biblical church was to emerge from the mess of medieval Catholicism, and Protestants have been thanking God for the Reformation ever since Martin Luther. Thank you for listening to Letter from England, broadcasting at emission.net. Goodbye for now. Emission.net